Hello team, welcome back. In the last lecture, we have solved the persistent data issue with the Docker Swarm. Today we will see how we can deploy a complete stack in Docker Swarm. So we are going to deploy the distributed voting app, which we have already deployed in some of our assignment, right? But over there we have deployed the voting app in multiple commands. Today we will see how we can deploy the complete distributing voting app with a single command, right? So let's start with. So to distribute any stack, the basic thing you need is the YAML file, right? It could be the compose YAML file or it could be the stack YAML file, right? In the YAML file, we have already seen in the YAML file, we have different kind of services and the application which is related to that particular service, right? So to deploy a complete stack in the Docker Swarm, you just need to get or prepare the YAML file and you need to deploy your stack with the help of that particular YAML file, right? So over here, I have mentioned the GitHub code location of the distributed voting app, right? I will attach this particular PDF as a resource of this particular lecture so that you can also get it, right? Now, once we will deploy the stack, if we need to find out that how many stacks are running, then you can execute a command docker swarm ls, right? If you want to know that how many tasks are running in a single stack, then you can execute a command docker stack ps, then you can define the stack name. If you want to know that how many services and how many replicas of a particular service is running, then you can execute a command docker services, then your stack name. So let's go to the terminal and let's see all these things in a practical way. So first I'm opening the GitHub location of that particular project on which we was working, right? This is the distributed voting app project, right? Which we have already used in the assignment, right? So this is the GitHub location, and if you will see, then you will get an docker stack YAML file. See, docker stack YAML is here. Let's open this particular file in new tab, and you can see this is the YAML file. So what we will do, we will copy this YAML file. So let's click on the row and let's copy all the text which is present over here, right? Now let's go to the Visual Studio tool and create another file, docker stack.yaml, right? And let's paste it over here. So first, before starting this, let's try to understand this. So this has the version 3, right? Over here we are defining the different services. So first service I'm defining is the Redis, right? The Redis is using the Redis Alpine image, right? And which network this Redis is going to use? This will use the front end network. Then we have the deploy, right? So we are going to create the single replica of this particular Redis. Now we have the update configuration. Over here I'm defining the parallelism. Now next tag is parallelism and the count is 2. You can see this is defined inside the update configuration, right? So it means if you want to update this particular YAML and redeploy this service, then this service can execute two containers in a parallel, right? It means this particular service can update two containers in a parallel, and the delay between the 2 and 2 set. Suppose you want to update the 4 containers, right? So it will update the 2 containers, then take 10-second delay, right? And next update the, and after the 10-second it will pick up the update of next 2 containers, right? Then we have the restart policy and condition is on failure, right? So it means if any container will fail in this particular task, then a new container will be spinned up, right? The next service we have the DB. We are going to use the Postgres 9.4. These are the volumes which we are going to use, and network it will use the backend. We have the deploy placement constraint, right? That DB will execute on the manager node only, right? Why? Because we are attaching the volumes, right? So we don't want to distribute this particular volume across the swarm nodes which are running inside the swarm. Then we have the next vote app, right? And this vote app is taking the image from the Docker samples example voting app before, right? We have already seen this. The voting app is published on port 5000 to the external world and 80 to the container. It will use the front end network, depends on the Redis. So before starting this voting app, Redis container should be in the running mode. Then we have the deploy policy. We are going to create two replicas of this particular service. Update configuration, again the parallelism is 2, and restart policy is on failure. After this we have the another service result, right? This will also take the image from the Docker samples, right? The port on which the result is published is 5001, and container will communicate on port 80. This will use the backend network and depends on the DB. So until the DB will be started, this service will not start, right? This has the deploy policy, and replica is one, update configuration 2, delay 10 seconds, restart on condition. Then next we have the worker, right? In the worker we have the Docker Compose, example voting app worker. Network, it will use the front end and back end network both. Then we have the mode replicated, the replicas are ones, right? Then we have the label, that app voting, so we can also define the label of a particular service, right? Then we have the restart policy 10 on failures, delay 10 seconds, max attempt 3, and window is 120 seconds, right? So it will take max 3 attempts if this particular worker will fail to deploy, right? And the maximum window to and a maximum window of the retry is 120 seconds. The placement is role node manager. So this will also execute on the manager node. Then we have the visualizer, right? Inside the visualizer, we again using the Docker sample visualizer stable. It is published on port 8080. Container will also continue on port 8080. Stop grace period. Grace period means if something went wrong, then this should be stopped within this particular defined time, right? These are the volumes, right? The deploy placement constraint. So we have seen all these things, right? So right now we don't have any code on our machine. We don't have anything on our machine. To deploy a complete stack of the services, what we just need this particular YAML file, right? So I will copy this file, go to my terminal. Now you can see I'm inside my root directory. Suppose over here we are going to create a directory like sample service stack, right? Put ls, you can see sample service stack is created. We will go to this sample service stack, right? Over here we will create the docker compose YAML file, vi docker hyphen stack dot YAML. Hit enter and paste the complete file in this particular file, right? The complete data. You can see the version is not pasted, right? So we have defined the version 3. Escape, press colon wq to save your file, put ls, then you can see the file is here. Now to start up the service, we will execute a command docker stack deploy hyphen c my docker file name, then stack name. So suppose I'm going to take the stack name like voting stack, right? Hit enter button. So you will see it is creating the services, right? So over here we are getting the message like creating the services voting stack redis, creating the services voting stack db vote result worker, like this. But actually a scheduler is working in the background, right? So we are getting the message quickly, but actually if we are creating a number of replicas, then this may take some time, right? Because the same scheduler is working, which is checking the resources configuration and starting the services as well. This may take few seconds to few minutes. It all depends on the number of replicas what you are defining, right? Now if you want to check that how many stack are running, then you can execute a command docker stack ls. So you can see only one stack is running, and in this particular stack 6 services are running as well. So if you want to check that how many tasks are running, then you can execute a command docker stack ps, then your stack name. So it will show you all the tasks which are running. Here is the current state and the id of the task, right? Please remember this is not your container id, right? Because container name is much bigger than this name, right? If you will put docker container ls on my master node, then we will see that how many containers are running, and you can see the containers name are much bigger. See, because of the unique name, this is taking the complete image name, then tag, then it is taking the task name, then defining a random generated id over here, right? So container name is not as task name. Task is running inside the container, but task name and container name is not a similar kind of thing. Let's clear out the console. Now if you want to see that how many services are running and what is the replication status of these services, so you can execute a command docker stack services, then your stack name, hit enter. So you can see 2 services of the vote are running, one service of worker is running, one service of db is running, one service of visualizer is running, one service of redis, and one service of result is running over here. Team, sometimes it may happen that worker application will not execute, and if you will open the log of the worker services, then you may get an error like this: system aggregation exception, one more record occurred, no such device or address, system dot internal socket exception, right? Every time this error will not reproduce every time, but sometimes this worker app will not execute, and you may get this particular error when you will execute a command docker service log, docker service logs, and define your service name, right? Now this is the, now this is not an error with your code, this is not an error with the docker, right? This error is basically related to the .NET framework which is running inside the worker, right? So sometimes you may get that particular error, sometimes sometimes you may lucky that you will not get this error. Right now I'm not getting this error, but it may happen when I will stop this and again execute this, I may get this error. So so there's only one solution for this particular error. You need to modify your docker YAML file. We need to go to the worker, and instead of the single replica you can define n number of replicas. Suppose define 10 number of replicas or 20 number of replicas, right? So that it may possible that single server or single task may get the connection with your database. This error is just related that you will not get the connection with the database, and this is the Microsoft .NET framework error. This is not the code error, right? Sometimes your code will not able to find out the DNS and you may face this particular error. Let me show you again, right? The error is one or more error occurs, no such device or address, right? And you will get the socket exception. This error specifically will come in this particular service, worker service, because worker service is using the .NET framework. So we have seen how we can deploy a complete stack in a single command. We don't need any code, we don't need anything, we just need that particular YAML file. We need to execute this particular YAML file, and all kind of work will automatically done, right? Now let's go to the digital ocean. Copy any IP whatever you want. Suppose I'm going to copy this IP, right, and paste it, and our services was running on port 5000, right? This was the voting, and result was running on 5001, right? And visualizer was running on 8080, right? These port was defined inside my YAML file. So see, if I will vote for dogs, then the result over here will change. See, the 100% vote are going for the dog, right? And inside the visualizer we are getting the different containers which is running inside my stack. So my manager is executing three containers: the visualizer itself, the DB, and the worker, right? Redis is basically executing in the node worker 1, and then vote container is, and single vote container is running in worker 1, second is running in worker 2, and result is running in worker 2, right? So we have defined that visualizer and DB will execute on the manager node, right? Let's see. We have defined that this is the worker node, this will define on manager, and this is the DB which is also defined on the manager, right? So same thing we are getting over here. So team, this is the way how can you deploy n number of service with a single command with a single YAML file. You just need to create your configuration YAML file, stack YAML file, and you need to just execute it, and rest of the work is the responsibility of the Docker Swarm and Docker itself, right? So thank you team, thanks for your time.